Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Academic Support Center's Wednesday night workshop. Today, we're going to be talking about APA basics, so hopefully you guys are all at the right workshop. My name is Laura O'Brien. I'm one of the tutors at the Academic Support Center, and Dalen Johnson is also a tutor there, and she is helping me moderate tonight. Just a reminder that we are recording this so that we can put it on our YouTube channel. And I'm going to go ahead and get started talking about APA basics. All right, so this little presentation is entitled Demystifying APA Format. 7th edition, it's been 7th edition for a couple, 3 years now. Oh, maybe even 4. But all of these citation styles do tend to change, so they update them periodically. So right now we're in 7th edition. It's possible that you might be looking around for information on APA format. Just remember to be looking for 7th and not 6th. So why are we doing this tutorial? APA is probably the most widely used citation style that you will find here at AU. It's especially used in the social sciences. It's used in anthropology, education. So if you grew up on MLA, you might occasionally encounter it at in like an English class. If you've ever done Chicago Manual Style, which is kind of with the footnotes and the little numbers above your citations, that's Chicago Manual Style. You may run into those, but by and large, you're going to be doing APA. So it's still citing and it's still giving credit to your sources, but it's just a little bit different formatting. So that's the thing you have to get used to. Something you can always come, by the way, to talk to us about at the Academic Support Center. You want to make sure that you get pretty good at this so that you can avoid any kind of plagiarism. And it is how you start to get into your profession and into your discipline, being able to use sources and use them correctly. So the first thing that we're going to go over is the formatting of a paper. This is something that you will always get instructions on when you are getting assignments. Normally, the professors are looking for a 1-inch margin, 12-point font, and a page number in the upper right-hand corner. So when your professor tells you you have to do your paper in MLA format, that is what they're asking you for. So your title page is your page numbers start at the title page, and then your title page is going to be the title of your paper. Everything is double spaced, so you're going to double space, and then you're going to include your name, the course number, the professor's name, and then the date. To the right of the screen, you see something called an abstract. So an abstract is really just it's like a summary of the paper. And whenever you download, say, a template for APA, it will come with an abstract page. You won't always have to have an abstract. In fact, most of the time, you won't be having an abstract. So this is just kind of part of the standard formatting and the templates. But again, only if you are asked to do an abstract do you need to do one, or if you're doing a very long paper in some sort of research project. Some other things to note: there are varying kinds of headings in APA. So the first thing you're going to do in your in the body of your paper is you will repeat that title at the top of your first page. That will be centered and it will be bolded. The next heading you'll see, if you look a little bit farther down into this slide, so closer to the middle of this page that we're looking at, that will be a header for your major sections. You may or may not have major headings in your sections, It just depends on how big the paper is and how you want to organize it. If you are, if it's a long paper that has a lot of sub heading information, you might use more. But generally, maybe you'll use the major headings, and that's usually about it. It just depends on what you're working on. The page to the right is the references page. So if you're remembering MLA, that would be your works cited page in MLA. For APA referencing, couple of things. You will use the word references. It will be centered and it will be bolded in the middle. And then just like MLA, you will follow that with your various references. Those will all be in alphabetical order based on the whatever's here in this first section of the listing, which is usually the author name. In APA, you tend not to use title names. If you don't have an author, you can almost always figure out what kind of author to put in there. And I will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Another thing to note on the references page is the hanging indent. So the hanging indent is the first line of the reference is left justified, and then the next lines, however many, are one tab, I think it's 0.5 over. If you format it rather than trying to tab it over, it tends to stay together a little bit better. So I definitely recommend formatting them. Here are some of the extra levels of headings that you might run into. Again, it's kind of rare, let's say an undergraduate paper, to have to do too many headings. But first one is the one we just looked at. It's bolded, it's centered. If you have to do subheadings, those are flush to left, bold, and sorry, title case, forgot to say that, title case. And then a subheading will be flush left, but in italics, bold, with a title case heading. This is all information that you can find in various places. So again, it's going to be rare that you're going to run into all of these headings for one of your papers. Generally, you're going to be at level 1. But you can look at either Purdue OWL, you can look at our LibGuides, or you can look at the APA website themselves to kind of get more information on the headings. All right, so that is what the formatting of the paper looks like. It's pretty standard. You know, our programs tend to default to the 1-inch margin, et cetera. You might be asked to do Times New Roman. You might be asked to do several different kinds of fonts. So just keep that in mind. Whatever your professor is looking for from you, that's what you're going to do. So once you've got the formatting going, now you need to start thinking about your citations. So just a reminder, a citation is an acknowledgement of another person's ideas, words, texts, visuals. You want to make sure that you are never using anybody else's information without giving credit to it. You can use it, but make sure that you're giving credit for it, and also make sure that it's clear that you are talking about somebody else's work and not your work. Whenever you are paraphrasing, in other words, whenever you're taking somebody else's work and putting it in your own words, that needs to be cited. If you are taking a direct quote or taking, you know, the exactly worded text from something, that also needs to be cited. So there are only a few pieces of information that don't need to be cited. They're very general, like Chicago is in Illinois, or, you know, the Pacific Ocean is on the West Coast and Atlantic is on the East. I tend to like to cite even anything that involves like dates or, you know, beyond 1776. So you can always put a few more citations in than you think might be necessary just to cover yourself. So that's just me. Someone else can chime in here and let me know if that's not necessary. The way that you do citations can be either at the end of a sentence, and that's called parenthetical, and that's what you probably have seen many times over. So you're looking at a sentence, lots of information, and then in parentheses, there's the citation. You can also do it within the sentence. That's called a narrative citation. And either way is acceptable and a proper way to do a citation. In terms of what belongs in a citation, APA is all about the year. I think one of the things about APA is that it is, because it's the social sciences and education, and there's lots of development and lots of research going on all the time, they tend to be a little bit more dynamic. In fact, you may take a class in which they tell you, I don't want to see any sources that are more than 10 years old. So APA, with APA style, you are looking for the author name like you've always done for citations, but you're also going to be looking at the year that the text was published. If you are directly quoting something, then you will be adding as well either a page number, or if it's like a website which doesn't have page numbers, you would actually put P-A-R-A-P for, I'm sorry, P-A-R-A period for paragraph. And you would literally count down how many paragraphs from the top of that particular page that information is. Remember that first and second one always, and then think about when you are directly quoting, that's when you'll use the page number, the PARA. APA in general would really like it if you don't do too much direct quoting, by the way, but you have to do what's necessary. So this is what they look like. You're always going to use the author's name, and you will use the year of the information that you put in the reference. In other words, often it's just a year, but sometimes there's a month and a year. In the in-text citation, you're only going to use a year. If you have two authors, you're going to put an ampersand between them and put them both in. If you've got three or more authors, you are going to just use the first author that's listed. So often, if you've already started looking at journal articles, for example, you might have a list of 20 people that have been working on this particular paper. You only use the first one, so don't ever rearrange it in alphabetical order or anything like that. Put it in exactly as you see it on the page. That's how they're giving credit. And you'll use that first name in that line, and then you'll use this Latin phrase, et al, period, which means and the others. Always the AL period. So even in the middle of your sentence, you're going to use et al period. And then always followed by the year. A lot of the time, you will not have an author, especially if you were looking at websites. It's so common as to be expected. There's a couple of things you can do in that case. So at the very least thing you can do is the title of the particular page that you're looking at in quotes. More often, though, you'll be able to find somebody behind this website. What I mean by that is maybe it's a .org and it's some sort of not-for-profit organization. The National Association of Social Workers. They can be your author. So that is preferable to the title of an article. So when you're looking at a website, let's say, and you can't really find what you're looking for, look around, see if you can figure out who the organization is. The other thing you're going to run into a lot with your sources is that there's no date, again, especially on websites. So a couple of things to remember: if you don't have a date, you don't want to take it from the bottom of the website, where there's like the copyright information. Either look for the byline near, let's say, the top or near the author's name, null, or you're going to assume that there just is no date. In that case, you put n.d. for no date. So it's a very straightforward system. I actually kind of like it a lot. The other thing that can kind of stop you in your tracks is just figuring out what it is you're looking at. So sometimes you've got a website, but you can't figure out anything about them. And of course, we want to make sure that we have credible, usable websites, or at least we know who we're quoting when we're quoting from here. So check the About Us to see what it is you're looking at. Maybe in the mission statement, you can get the name of a group author of some kind, or even look at the URL to see the group author's name. The other thing that you're going to run into is all kinds of reports, brochures, press releases. Do you know what they are in front of you? You may not. That's known as gray literature. And again, when you are looking for sources that have the information that you're hoping to use, sometimes they're going to be a government report or a brochure or something like that. So there is definitely a way to cite those. The first thing you got to do is identify what you're looking for. And then most resources that have APA information can also help you out. You can just say, brochure, and it will, and look for that as in the APA format. So here are a couple of ways to use in-text citations. One way that's a very obvious signal to your reader is to put your citation within the sentence. So you'll have something like this: according to Carmer, and then the year follows, 1978, autism is, etc. So a couple of things about that. When you use this source in your sentence and you use this signal phrase like according to, or Carmer implies, or Carmer indicates, or whatever, we know right away that that's coming from a source and not coming from you. So it's a signal. That's why I call it a signal phrase. And it lets us know that now we're shifting from your perspective to the source's perspective. And when you do that, it makes it really clear that the source is being used. In this particular one, this one is directly quoted. You'll see that because there's quotes around some of these words. That indicates a direct quote. And whenever there's a direct quote, you have to have a location. So it's either a page number or a paragraph number. The blue one is just your basic parenthetical. So at the end of the sentence, the year, always the year, just put the year in. Anytime you're going to use that source's name, you're going to put the name, you're going to put the year next to it. As you saw with according to, you put it in parentheses after the name, but here at the end of the sentence in a parenthetical, you put them together. The next one in the red is, and you have to forgive me, my eyesight's not great. There's your et al again. So so-and-so et al, period, followed by the year, and then the rest of this sentence. This sentence doesn't need a comma after the year because that's not the kind of sentence it is. So you're going to fit this signal phrase in grammatically as well. And this is another kind of obvious indication that there's a source being used. And then finally, the yellow one here at the end shows what that n.d. and no author looks like, and no author or group. So you've got the title of the web page or whatever this is in quotations, followed by the n.d. for no year. And again, even if you know there's no year, you still have to put something there, so you can put n.d. For one thing, the year indicates that it's a source. If you were just using the name without the source, it wouldn't be quite as clear. All right, so the reference page. So this is that separate page that we saw at the beginning of the presentation, where you give credit to the authors. The other thing this does is it helps your reader look at your in-text citations and then be able to go to the back of your paper and find the actual reference. So it's kind of a neat little system. You are always going to have, if you got a source that you're using in your paper and you've done an in-text citation, that source needs to be listed on your references page. Conversely, whatever's on your references page needs to be in your paper. So a lot of times we'll collect sources, right, that we think we're going to use. If you end up not using all of them, then you need to get them out of your references list. So that's kind of one of those last checks you want to do. Make sure that everything corresponds in the paper, on the works cited page, on the works cited page, in the paper. Oh, one more thing. It's alphabetical. So, all right. So this is something that I learned sort of late in the game that really helped me, is understanding the elements of APA. And I think once you kind of keep that in mind, it'll help you to make sense of what you need information-wise to make your in-text citations. So there are 4 elements. There is the author, and APA uses the author's last name and the first initial and or the middle initial only. It then is followed by the date, which can be a full date or it can just be a year. Then that's followed by the title and then a source. So the title could be the title of a journal article. It could be the title of a book. It could be the title of a web page, the web page that you're looking at this moment. And then that source is the publisher or the website, or the journal that it's coming from. So keep those 4 in mind, and you'll, at least the very least, is you'll know how to do the basics of your APA citation. Ask yourself some of these questions to see if you can figure out what you need here for your information. So the author, who's responsible for the work? Again, it could be a named author, but it could be the group. If you've got a group, the Centers for Disease Control, the National Institute of Health, those can be authors. And it's a lot easier to use the names of authors or of some group than it is to use the titles of articles. When was the work published? Again, sometimes you won't have a publication date. What is the work called? I like to think of it more as, what am I looking at? So what is the title at the top of this web page or whatever? And then finally, the source. Where can I get this thing? So again, a book is the publisher. Most likely you're going to be looking at electronic sources. And so you're going to be thinking website, digitized journal, that kind of thing. So here are some of the common source types. So the books, I mean, we have our textbooks, I suppose, but surely everything is electronic now. Journal articles and websites, these are the most common. One thing I want to point out about APA is that your titles are only capitalized at the beginning of phrases. So if you look at this one for this book, My Biggest Research Mistake, Adventures and Misadventures in Psychological Research, you will see that only my is capitalized and adventures is capitalized. So unlike MLA that uses that title case and capitalizes all the important the important words, in APA, it's really just the first phrases. Now, you would also capitalize any kind of a proper noun, so anybody's name, things like that. It gets very hard to get used to when you start working on this, but that's also a good way to tell whether your APA is correct or not. Journal articles, one thing to remember with them is that they often come with a volume and issue number, and those are the numbers to the right of the name of the journal. Include the page numbers if you can, and even though they're digital, they are usually just digitized versions of the journal, and so they're going to have real page numbers. The other thing to think about here is the DOI. At this point, almost all journals, at least digitized journals, have a DOI, which is a Digital object identifier. It's basically a permanent link as opposed to URLs, which can kind of get broken. Let's see, what else to point out here? Then also the journal, even though the article names are lowercase, the journals are capitalized as you would a proper noun. And then finally here, the website is, again, you might have a named author, you might not. So here we've got a named author, but the next one is actually is the APA, so the American Psychological Association. Another thing to point out here is web pages get italicized as we think of like books getting italicized. So only when you're dealing with a web page is that italicized. So I think that is all for me. So a couple of things to tell you guys about. We are available at, here's the link right here, but you can, as you probably know, you can get on through the academics portion of AU's website. We can help you with all of this citation stuff, as well as any other part of the writing process. So please feel free to make an appointment with us. We are, I think we're now have hours 7 days a week. So including Saturdays and Sundays, Sunday evening for sure for me, because I do that one. So any part of the process, you are welcome to make an appointment with us. A couple of other sources, you guys have probably all heard of Purdue OWL. Purdue OWL still remains a really good source for APA formatting information. Do stay away from citation generators if you can, or if you use one, make sure that you find a good resource like Purdue OWL or this other one I'll talk about in 1 second, the APA Style Blog, to check your work. So those citation generators can be nice for just gathering all the information, but they're often wrong. Sometimes you'll get a perfect one and then you'll get all kinds of wrong. So make sure that if you're going to use them, that you check against something before you turn your paper in. There is a listing here for the APA Style Blog. That is also really helpful. It's actually coming from the American Psychological Association, and they're the ones who created the APA style. So it's very navigatable, is that a word? Navigable website to find things that you're looking for. And within our section of the Aurora website, we also have some of these templates. So we have MLA template and an APA template for you to just download. You know, there's not that much formatting to do anymore, but it does give you some models to work off of in terms of the different kinds of sources. Thanks everybody for attending. So the annotated bibliography usually is just 3 or 4 things. It's the reference, and then you're looking at what you're gathering as a source, and or sources, I should say, to support your paper, and kind of vetting it a little bit. So summarizing it, maybe thinking about how you would like to use it, and then making sure it's credible, kind of seeing what it has to offer for your research. And again, I mean, it's, you know, I definitely, we talk with lots of people who have to do annotated bibliography. So it's definitely a thing that everybody's got to do.